English dictionary, whole, which is a whole enterprise in itself. This is one of the expansions of the dictionary. So the historical dictionaries look at particular words, senses over the history of, in this case, the history of the English language. So you'll have how a word, say, how a word originated, what we have as how this word originated, how this word has changed over a period of time, and how this word is being used today. So you will see a historical record of individual words and its senses over time. And the president of Oxford Languages at Oxford UP is Casper Grathwold, who oversees this project. Why is it doing that? That's weird. So I showed you some sources for the quotations, right? Those other sort of dictionaries. And obviously we use Literary Greats, which is used the same way for other dictionaries, African-American artists and musicians, slave narratives and abolitionist writings, African-American English in natural context, like on social media, things like Black Twitter, but as well as newspapers. And there's a long periodical history for within the African-American community, and of course, Black scholarly commentary. Should try that again. Oh, that's interesting. So I've already provided, this is so weird. I know I did not do this. This is weird, but anyway, this is a 3-year project that's funded by Mellon Grant, and it's in cooperation with the Hutchins Center for African American Research at Harvard University, which means, Skip Skates is on this project. And, oh, I guess I did. So there are 1,500 terms that have been identified that are considered for inclusion so far. So 1,500, that's better. More than 2,600 quotations, right, that have been used. Approximately 200 senses have been drafted. You can use this QR code to go to this website, and you can watch or listen to recordings from live panel discussions that they've had. They've done several public ones and other information. And the other thing I'd love for you to be able to do is if you use this QR code, it'll take you to this. Another way that they're finding words for the dictionary is by just asking people. So you go to this page and you fill this in, words or phrases that you'd like to recommend. And then you provide a definition if there's anything that you provide as much information as possible. If you have sound files, that's even better, as much as you can provide us with. So doing some crowdsourcing as well. All right, so then the significance of this research in general. I know I'm covering a lot. So let's see. Oh, I guess I'll just say this. So why language use in African-American communities? It's kind of funny I'm talking about this because this is like one of the questions I ask my students at the end of the class, right? This is part of what the class is. We have 2 questions: what it is and why is it important? That's what guides my entire class. So, and this is why it's important to me, and hopefully why it would be important to others. So this is a language variety, unlike others that we may study in English or in other spaces, or in America, I guess I should say, or in other spaces, that involves a particular community that essentially has been told since the end of enslavement, sort of get out, right? In lots of ways, in lots of spaces. And then what it looks like, because we're not going anywhere and we are here. If you've seen the film, then you probably have more of an understanding of what I mean by that. So what is going on? This is so weird. I have no idea why that was there. I'm wondering about my saving on this, but anyway, what gets me to this point is, if you've seen the film Get Out, the issue of racism comes up, obviously, and what that looks like being a person in this space, right? So when we talk about language and language variation, we say languages vary because of issues around separation. And that separation can be physical, but it can also be psychological. separation. And we've had that. And that's why African American language is considered an ethnic variety. So it doesn't matter where you are in the US, you are a part of that community because there is a shared history that has helped to create this particular variety. And what I'm going to skip over here is I'm not going to play the audio clips for CAST. Isabel Wilkerson, who's an award-winning author and journalist. This is a very influential, amazing book. I highly recommend that you read it, Cast: The Origins of Our Discontents. And then also Toni Morrison. Now, Toni Morrison I will play because I would be remiss not to play Toni Morrison. But Toni Morrison talks about this idea about race. So I'm going to have to do 2 clips.
That the people who do this thing, who practice racism, which are bereft.
Oh, wait. Sorry, I got to go back because it wanted to play both. And I wanted to play this one.
That the people who do this thing, who practice racism, are bereft. There is something distorted about the psyche. It's a huge waste, and it's a corruption and a distortion. It's a profound neurosis that nobody examines for what it is. It feels crazy. It is crazy. If you can only be tall because somebody's on their knees, then you have a serious problem. And my feeling is white people have a very, very serious problem. I'm not going to give up 1 drop of melanin in order to get there. I'm not going to erase my race or my gender to get there. I want all of it. I deserve all of it, and we all do. I don't want to be blanded, bleached out in order to participate in this country and walk any hall of power or corridor that I want to.
So one of the reasons why I include Toni Morrison, besides I think she's one of the most brilliant thinkers of our time, along with James Baldwin, is she gave that response was during an interview with Charlie Rose. And part of it is where, this meme emerged from that interview, and you can find it all over the place. And part of that was he asked her, he raised this criticism. He said that some people have this criticism that you don't write white characters. And she was taken aback by that. She was offended by that, as she should be, because she was like, why would you ask me something like that? And she questioned the very audacity of him to even ask her. How disrespectful and just out of place for you to ask me such a question, right? And this is another quote from a speech that she gave at Portland State. I didn't realize it was from that for quite a while, because I just come across the particular the quote. But she talks about the function of racism, and I include this in her sort of all of her discussion when she talks about racism, because you can see how this has developed over the course of her career. And the reason I do this is part of this is how this shows up in African American language research. When I came across this, I was like, this is exactly what has been going on in African American language research, right? The very serious function of racism is distraction. And so remember when I said there's been so much research about the history and development of African American language, these warring factions, and there's been all this research about African American language, African American children and education, mostly from deficit perspectives, a lot because of desegregation and then having to sort of deal with Black children. And so I'm just like, I see the same research that's been done over and over and over again, because it's meant to be a distraction, right? We are meant to stay in this particular place. It keeps you from doing your work, right? It keeps you explaining over and over and over again your reason for being. Somebody says you have no language, and you spend 20 years proving that you do. And it's longer than 20 years because it's still going on. Somebody says your head isn't shaped properly, so you have scientists working on the fact that it is. Somebody says you have no art, so you dredge that up. Somebody says you have no kingdom, so you dredge that up. None of this is necessary because there will always be one more thing. This is, I'm going to skip this too, but this is a scene talking about the sunken place, because the reason I say that is because I feel that is where Black people, Black language, Black African-American language research is, that we are coming from this space of this sunken space. And in part because that issue of distraction is continually used. But here's where I mentioned about Afrofuturism. This all fits into this context of Afrofuturism for me. In Afrofuturism, my simple way of this that I always define Afrofuturism is what you see here. There are Black people in the future, right? So we start with get out, we're not going anywhere, and we're going to be here in the future. So you have to deal with that. And Alicia Wormsley has this art installation around the country. This one's a billboard in Pittsburgh, but if you use that QR code, you can look at some other spaces and other billboards. So that's the base definition of Afrofuturism, and how I have learned and developed and continue to grow and shape and learn and understand the importance and significance and how African-American language is important and fits into just the fabric of this country, the fabric of the people, the history, as well as the future of this country. And it wasn't until I did this interview with Liz Borden for her Choose to Be Curious podcast that I began to sort of think about and articulate those concepts that I provide for you. So this I will play for you. And then, you know, I'd say I spent a better part of my career trying to build community within and amongst African Americans who work on language and linguistics, in whatever way, shape that might be. And this community has grown tremendously or significantly over the course of the 25 years that I've been in this area. And so for the first times, right, instead of there being a focus on, you know, copular variation or what have you, Black people are actually getting into this, and they're actually asking questions that are personal out of curiosity about their identities in this space, as opposed to, I've got to prove this thing. And so I think part of it is, you know, to what extent do Black scholars get to be curious versus carrying a weight of, I've got something to prove? And I think that has existed within research of looking at language in African American communities. And we're just now really getting to a space of Black people, Black scholars coming into this field can be curious and not just, I've got this burden of proof to prove to you that this is legitimate, that this makes sense, to counteract your ideas about deficit and negativity, right? I can be curious about language in the way that other people have been curious and carefree about how they look at language. And that's why I think right now is just one of the most amazing times that I get to see in my field. So despite all those things that I've said, right, like, racism is a distraction, I'm hopeful, right? Because I get to see all of these emerging scholars in the field who are doing things. And the reason I was able to sort of think about that was I thought about, you know, when she asked me what is curiosity, right? And I was like, well, you know what? I feel like the curiosity was beaten out of me early in my career to some extent, because I was still on that I've got to prove stage, right? So I think I had competing forces. There's proving and there's curiosity. And fortunately, curiosity has won out, because that's how we advance scholarship, research, our thinking, advance humanity, right? Because we're curious about things. We want to know something beyond the thing that we're just seeing in front of us. We want to be able to make sense of the things that we're seeing. And I finally am seeing people who are just at least getting on the tip of doing more of that, in less of still trying to show I belong in this space. And so that's why I can have a very Afrofuturistic perspective and do that sort of analysis, because I know that Black people are in the future. And it's not, we're getting from Get Out to Afrofuturism. And then, I'd say I've spent, I can't use my keyboard. Anyway, those are the thoughts I wanted to share with you for now. And these are pictures of Black linguists. From the bottom one is from when I used to do the African American language conferences. That was on Black women. So Geneva Smitherman is the fourth one from the left on your screen, sort of this historic figure, the one who did talking and testifying. And right next to her is Marcelina Morgan, who is retiring this year. She's at Harvard and runs the Hip Hop Archive. And then the wonderful Elaine Richardson, who I've known since we were both graduate students. We shared a room together at a summer sort of institute type thing that was held at Penn State, and Geneva Smitherman was one of the speakers. I think that might have been the first time I met Geneva. And Elaine also does hip hop research and is an artist, really, artist, linguist, literacy scholar. Jen Bloomquist is in African American Studies and Linguistics, and I'm sort of at the bottom. And the top one is one of our dinners that we have, a Black linguist, John Rickford, right there in the front in red. He and his wife, Angela, which I know Angela is there because they always travel together, but I don't see her in this picture, right? Oh, she's out of the frame because she's sitting at the head of the table next to him. But those are, senior Black scholars, emerging Black scholars, mid-career Black scholars. Arthur Spears is in the back. Renee Blake is there, right? All of these fabulous people. Alicia Wassink, Shalom Goodman, who just gave a talk here. Sharice King, who's a new up-and-coming scholar at the University of Chicago, worked with John Rickford and wrote an award-winning paper on the Rachel Gentile case. So anyway, that's just kind of what I wanted to share you to get us started. And so if you knew nothing about me, then now you know something. Thank you very much.
Wow. So, oops, are you still there?
I'm here.
Okay.
I just stopped sharing. Oh, that's weird.
No,
that's weird that my video went off. Sorry. Yeah.
If I could, I guess we'll just have with everybody here. So just let everybody know that your names are on here, and that I am recording. Finally, I was so starstruck, in fact, that I hit record and then didn't press the right button, and then I was reminded to record again by my friend who's here, and I didn't. And then finally, I looked at it and said, "Oh, I'm not recording." So then I started recording. So my blunders aside, can we go back to where you started, which was with the essentially you're focusing on this book, right? Mm-hmm. Right, Language in African American Communities, which is where I started the title. I thought I should do something with the most recent book that you had. I think mm-hmm. the most recent, and just briefly go over again the kinds of influences that you had in the introduction, so that I can get that on the recording. Would that be possible?
Oh, okay. Did you want the PowerPoint again, or just for me to tell you?
You can just speak on it. Yeah.
So the influences for this book have just sort of been throughout my career. I've had wonderful mentors. Geneva Smitherman's Talking and Testifying was one of the first books I encountered and read. I've read that book several times, backwards and forwards, quoted it often, used quite a few things of that, and actually modeled this book, my current book, much more after that, in the sense that it was the first time I'd encountered an academic writer using a voice that was much more true and authentic to them as an individual and as a everyday person, as opposed to trying to sound a particular way, a way that wasn't necessarily at home with them. And so I that's why the first chapter has that particular title for it, and because I went into this knowing that this is what I was going to do. I was going to, create my, or a new generation's idea or version of talking and testifying. In the same sort of way that I think the other book on there was Spoken Soul by the Rickfords, John Rickford, the picture that I had at the end, and then his son, Russell Rickford, of where I think he did that with Spoken Soul, which was an amazing book, an award-winning book, actually. And so that was really important. Tracy Weldon's newer book, I think it came out 2 years ago, on middle-class African-American language. The significance of that is she worked on that book for, probably 15 years. I remember when she started that research. So she worked on it quite a while. And the significance of that book goes against what I'd mentioned about seeing African-American language as this homogenous language, right? And it's clear that this is not the case, right? So that book is crucially important in that particular way. And I'm trying to think of what else that I have on there. No, I know there are 2 other books. I'm just blanking on what they are right now, but and those are just 2 particulars. Lisa Green's book, which I depended upon quite heavily for the chapter on the metagrammar that I provide for you. And I mean metagrammar, it really is that, is me thinking about how we think about grammar in African American language, because it is such a contested and I think problematic area. It's a chapter that I knew I was going to have to write for this book, but I was so reluctant to do it. And this was my way of being able to make sense of writing a chapter like this in this book. That is, I knew people wanted to have it, but I had to spend my time telling them all the reasons why they shouldn't want this and they shouldn't need this. But so Lisa Green's work was really important. And then the 5th book was the reader that's Sally Coco Mafwani, Guy Bailey, John Baugh, and who am I missing? There's one person I'm missing. There are 4 of them. I think I may have only said 3, but there are 4 of them. And it was a compilation. It was a really important book when it came out. It was one of the earlier books that came out after the Ebonics controversy. And it includes like all of these senior people in the field who have contributed all of this work, and it divides it in particular sorts of ways. But it's a book that I've relied on heavily, especially the Guy Bailey chapter with Eric Thomas and talking about phonology of African American language and some different things. Arthur Spears's work in that on talking about profanity. What is, who gets to decide what is profane, right? Which led to sort of this work about African American women's language, and where even like within the last month, I heard someone say this, that women don't use profanity, and it's like, that's just not true. This is not true. And so anyway, all of those are books that all have contributed quite a bit. And there were more. I had to take books off because there just weren't room for them. But, John Rickford's African American Vernacular English book that he wrote, which is a compilation of some of his work. Of course, John Baugh's Black Street Speech, a critical, phenomenal book in this, and just, many others that I could have included. But those really are the books that are sort of foundational for me.
Thank you for that. Really appreciate it. So this meeting that we're having is over. Well, let's see. I'm 61 now, so it's let's see. It's about 61 years in the making. Yeah. I was born in 62, a little bit before 66, and then your sister Deidre, right, is born in 64.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
These aren't their real names, but yes.
Okay. So sorry about that. I associate because anyway. So I've been associating that as your sister. But
she is. It's just not her real name, but yeah.
Anyway, so you're the pseudonym for your sister. So when we're in the process of coming into the recognition that we're humans, it's at the civil rights movement of the 1950s, like 1940s into the 1950s, has come up into the 1960s. Malcolm X is there, and I'm growing up in a college town, and you're growing up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Was that right? Where was it? Where were you?
Oh, no. I grew up in Texas.
Texas, right. Sorry, I'm putting
Sort of Texas and Louisiana. I spent a lot of time. Both my parents are from Louisiana. They were part of the sort of that second migration of people who were moving west, in addition to those who moved east. So when my parents moved, a lot of people from Louisiana, when they moved to Texas, they lived around people who were all from Louisiana, from various parts of Louisiana. So yeah, I'm a part of that. So we spent a lot of time going back and forth between the two places. I'd spend my summers there with my grandparents. So yeah.
And so this vastly different places to grow up in. And as somebody who, as a person who was growing up white in the Pacific Northwest and growing up in a university town, Washington State University, right? I had it pretty easy, but my dad was an archaeologist, anthropologist, and would take us down to the reservation, and there were a whole bunch of language things going on there. One day we were driving back home from going to Sweat, and I said to my dad, who didn't say very much very often. I said, is it okay that we're changing accents when we go down to Sweat? Is that all right? I mean, should we be speaking the way I speak at home with you, or what's going on there? We're shifting register, perfectly normal. That's all he said. And but that idea of still in the 1960s, well, that was the 1970s. Of this idea that there are these registers, these hierarchies of language, is sort of where this starts, is in and then in trying to learn Nez Perce and going from there. In terms of Texas, one of my uncles is a black man. One of my Nez Perce uncles from the Sweat House is a black man who grew up in Texas, and I've known him since I was very, very young, maybe 6 years old, 7 years old. And he finally told me that when he was young, that a man shot him in the leg, and of course that was because he was black and that man was white, and these things coming to me and mixed up with language, right? Are the things that fuel where I'm coming at language from, which is a position of radical democracy. I'd say that languages need to be something that are celebrated and that are part of our versatility, that goes through Norway, learning about dialects there, and dialects being associated with place. And the pride of place. So when I came to this place, I hadn't worked with African American students. I hadn't worked with Black students before, and so I had to come to this process. I knew that I had to come to a process of trying to understand that, and that's 20 years in the making, and I'm still stumbling through it, and so very grateful that I stumbled into your books, and it started with this Oxford Handbook of African American Language. The first two chapters, or the first three chapters, somewhat confused me. I'm having to really work at it, right? And I went to Sista Speak, and then a little bit into this one, and it's. And things are starting, because of what you've written, things are starting to coalesce in my mind. So I'm able to start saying, yeah, okay, I've seen this diversity of language. I've seen this breadth of possibility. And I've also seen, which Sista Speak gets at, this the ideological range that makes working with the Black students in my classes language-wise far more complex than it is with any other minority group in the classrooms. First off, I'm coming from this weird white perspective that I have, but you know, in starting to say, well, language is okay, your language is okay, right? You know, stop with this, I need to learn a different language, you know, like, let's start from wherever it is that you are and start creating versatility from there. That doesn't always work, and it's because of the ideological variations that go on, and how deeply felt and emotionally people are committed to those ideological perspectives of language, specifically Black people. So you know, I can be saying to one person, you know, like with way back when with sentence combining, when I was still doing that, I call that into question now, but using, like, saying, okay, well, you can, this is where you can say, you know, you can put a comma before ending a sentence with for sure, right? So I know that for sure, right? And talking to students and having students get that and really like buy into it, but in the same classroom, having people say, what are you doing teaching slang, right? And there are, you know, and they're in the middle of that conflict. I was wondering if you could speak to these kinds of educational issues.
So you hit on one of my pet peeves about equating African American language with slang, because I think, you know, that's one of the things we do at the very beginning. African American language is not slang. We have to define what slang is, right? Slang is just this momentary sort of fleeting vocabulary that we can think about it. It's an in the moment sort of thing that we create these words and phrases for various reasons. We want to be hip, we want to be cool, we were, you know, part of a particular group, what have you. And so that's not a language. That's just vocabulary, right? Segments. And so there's that. So as you were talking, you made me think about something from I was still a graduate student. I read this book by, I think it's David Blake. Probably cited in my in Sista Speaks somewhere when talking about language and education. But I always remember in this book, he talks about sort of similar things that you're saying, like, you know, these issues that arose in his classrooms when he had Black students in his classroom, and he's you know, a writing professor, and he's trying to help them with their writing. And this one Black girl says, you know, I just sprinkle punctuation throughout. I don't really know how it really works. I'm just putting it in here, trying to please you, trying to meet a particular expectation, but I have no connection to that level, that type of that life in that world, right? Like, I'm just performing. It's performative, right? And so Jay, oh, why am I blanking on Jay's last name? I can't feel like, anyway. So he is a University of Michigan professor that has long since passed. And he was the person I took this pro seminar with, my only pro seminar at the University of Michigan. He was in English and education in the College of Education, but also I think it was also in linguistics as well. And so he did a lot of work in this particular area, which is how I came across Blake. And part of that is, you know, how do we, what really are our expectations? What do we think good writing is? What does writing look like? You know, what are the standards that we're using? What are our expectations of students who don't come in from our same backgrounds, who don't come in from this particular sort of frame? And what are we accepting as knowledge, right? So I have these debates with, you know, people to this day about when they talk about what is linguistics, right? This is something that's going on in the area of linguistics right now. What is linguistics? And some people say linguistics is a scientific study of language. And, you know, we've had a debate, well, what about communities? And whose scientific perspective, right? I am sort of not a positivist, right? So I come from a particular, so you're talking about empirical research is the only way. And well, what about qualitative research, right? Like, so all of these discussions are going on. And I think there are similar things that we can think about that in the classroom, right? When we're talking about students and their writing and what it is, you know, what your goals are, what their goals are, what are the possibilities? Those same sorts of dynamics, I think, that play out in classrooms when we're talking about language variation, language change, language differences. And I found it one of the things that I find most interesting about that, what I have found to be one of the most interesting about that discussion was Shirley Rice Heath's book, Ways with Words. And she studies these two working class communities, as well as there's a middle class community, but there's a Black community and a white community that are these working class communities she calls Tracton and Roadville. And one of the things that she discovered was it wasn't that the Black kids, the kids from that community weren't as smart as the white kids. It was what was considered appropriate at the time. So where Black kids and white kids were different. And so what was valued in schools at the time weren't valuing what Black kids were bringing to the table. And by the time what was expected in school and what was valued that these Black kids did have, it had already been beaten out of them, right? It was that get out phase, right? We don't want that now. That's not what we're looking for. And so that's why I say it, in terms of instruction, what are you trying to get out of this? What is the point? I listened to the other podcast that you had up that you sent me the link to on multilingualism. And, the teacher's talking about, why can't they do X? Why do they always do this particular sort of thing, right? And not understanding that context and not understanding, instead of focusing on, why aren't they doing this thing the way that I want them to do it at this exact moment? It's what does language look like in what does a language community look like in this particular space? You have worlds colliding, right? And I love that they talked about that English is a second language for over 1 billion people. But what I kept listening for and I didn't hear was that English might be a second language for a lot of people, but there are also different Englishes, period. And people learn different Englishes. So there are parts of the world when they learn English, they learn British English. They don't learn American English. And there are differences between American and British English, and the same thing for all of the other places that we would consider being. So my basic thing is understanding context. Context is really important. Who is that person in this particular space? What are their goals and what are your goals? How do those particular things align? And what does that say overall in terms of the scheme of a writing classroom, right? The big debate in writing classrooms for African-American language speakers and other speakers who have been minoritized and whose language isn't valued in those spaces is, how do we get them to sound just like us? How do we get them to write just like us? And even the us differs, right? I grew up in Texas. Spelling in Texas and the Texas textbooks that I grew up on are not the same as in other parts of the country, because we all know how textbooks work. Different parts of the country get different textbooks because of all sorts of things, right? And so to this day, actually, I was writing something yesterday and I wrote the word judgment and I had an E in it and I was told that's wrong. And I'm like, but that's how I grew up spelling judgment, because the books that we had said that's what judgment is, right? These are still grammar books, prescriptive grammar books that are telling you how to write, and yet they're telling you something different, right? So if we can accept that there are differences and there's variation, there's not this one right way, then what does that look like when we open up that definition for the fact that we have people coming from all sorts of backgrounds into a classroom? And that I really think at this point in time, this only one particular way is sort of falling by the wayside in very practical ways, because look at what social media looks like. Look at Black Twitter. That's a whole thing. We had a whole conversation about that on the advisory board. What spellings do we use? Because people have taken control, right? When there isn't a space telling them that they can only do it this way, then people are creative naturally. They create new words. They create new spellings. They create all sorts of things. And then, so how does a classroom line up with that? Clearly, they're still able to read text and manage text because they do these levels of manipulation. It's kind of how the conversations that we had about hip hop in the beginning, right? Or rap music. Oh, this is bad. What are they doing? They're changing these spellings. Well, in order to change spellings, they had to understand what spelling was like in the first place. In order to change something, you have to know what the original thing, or not even original, but what is it that you're changing? That you have to understand how you're making those changes. And I think sometimes teachers in classrooms, there's a great book. It was a book on one of the slides from one of my mentees, April Baker Bell. The book Linguistic Justice. Have you read that? Because if you haven't, you should. Yes. Wonderful, right? Wonderful of the possibilities. What does it look like if you open your mind to getting out of this is the way it's always been done and it's supposed to be done, to we're in a context in which the classroom space as it is now is not the classroom space that it was, nor is that space how education was in schooling was even sort of initiated, right? Schooling was never meant to be about educating people to be better people per se, right? To explore and whatever. Schooling was meant to be to control people, right? We want to control learning, right? People have access to books. So we need to have them tell them which books to read, right? We don't want them reading just any books. We want them to read certain things because we want them to behave in certain sorts of ways, right? And so now you have a situation where the world has been opened up because of internet, because of better travel, etc. And so people have access in ways that they didn't have before. People have access to be creative, to be curious, to be change agents, to do all of those things that are so anti-schooling that schools are just at a loss of what do we do, right? Because we all have access to the same information. So then if we have all access to the same information, what school was can't be what school is today, right? We have to make a change in that. So anyway, that's a long way of describing, or at least trying to get at being open to where we are today and what that might mean in terms of writing instruction and what that looks like. Because maybe it's not about making everybody the same, but actually trying to figure out how all of these unique gifts and talents that people are bringing to the classroom, how do we explore that and make that something new?
Oh, wow. I've been trying to say that to the people I work with now for 20 years, and I hope the way you said it sinks in, because what I'm saying isn't sinking in with them. But I have students though who they're recognizing that it's, that what they're doing is building on language, and I don't know that every one of them would come out of the class saying, yeah, the old man taught me that I need to, become more versatile, but I'm hoping. I'm so grateful for how that was put. Thank you so much. I have a lot of other questions, but I know that this has gone on for an hour now, and I'm just gonna let it be beautiful and short and sweet, and just say thank you so much, Sonja, Dr. Lanehart, for coming in, for bringing for all of the hard work you have done to produce this wealth of knowledge.
Thank you.
We have here.
It's my pleasure to be here and to see. I don't see actual faces, but at least I see spaces for people. So I'm glad that people were interested and showed up and wanted to hear. If you have questions, I know it's time for us to go. I've got a dissertation, not my own, to go to dissertation defense. It's just a student who I've mentored here. But if you have questions that you want to follow up with me or ask me, you're free certainly to email me. You'll get a it's called I'm not out of office, but it explains some things about why you might not hear from me immediately. But I will get to your email. So please feel free to reach out. It's Lanehart, just my last name, @arizona.edu.
Thank you so much. Just to let you know, I believe we have one person here from China. The rest, almost the others are my students.
Okay.
And I thank you. I'm just going to let it go with that. Just thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much. You guys have a great rest of your day.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
All right. Well, that's that. Catch you all later. Yeah. Let's see.
Bye.
Bye-bye now.